Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV, and we greet you live from the All-America city of Morrisville in North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the United States of America. And wherever you are in the world, as we prepare for Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States, we wish you well. We hope you're doing okay. And on this show, we talk about global affairs, innovation, disruption in American politics, our democracy, but most importantly, what's going on around the world and your neck of the woods. And we want to hear from you on this show. Now, today I'm just going to go over a couple of things. First of all, police have identified victims of the Colorado LGBTQ shooting: Daniel Austin, Raymond Greer Vance, Kelly Loving, Derek Rump, and Ashley Paul, two of whom were transgender, were killed Saturday night in Colorado Springs. The 22-year-old suspect was charged with murder and hate crimes yesterday. He had a troubled past and mental illness possibly. Meanwhile, there was a tragedy in Raleigh here in North Carolina where an 11-year-old girl was killed in the Christmas parade. We pray for their family. And around the world, as we look to Indonesia, a devastating earthquake. 260 people dead, officials said. It's a 5 to 6 magnitude quake felt in Jakarta, the capital city, but it's the hardest in the region dozens of miles away. Indonesia gets frequently earthquakes often, and Chris Greco has some data he's going to share with us today on that. Now let's turn to Russia. Russia is struggling to make territorial advances in Ukraine. A new analysis shows that Russian forces have not taken more than 1,000 square miles since April. However, we know the war will continue. So what does this mean for Putin's strategy? Will he negotiate a war, end of this war, or will he continue firing away? We will talk about that this week and over the next few weeks. And finally, get ready for a busy day of travel as the airports are really full. My final thought today is looking at the Orion spacecraft, which reached the moon yesterday. The capsule passed within 81 miles of the lunar surface around the moon 5 days after launching as the Artemis at the Kennedy Space Center. This unmanned flight is a key step in the space agency's plans to return astronauts to the moon. And tomorrow we'll be talking about John F. Kennedy, the assassination which occurred on November 23rd, 1963. No matter where you were in the world or in the United States at that time, people will never forget that infamous day in the U.S. history and the history of the world. But it was President Kennedy who once said, "Why do we go to the moon?" At Rice University, we go to the moon because it is hard, not easy. And he pushed and challenged us to unite our nation so we could land man on the moon, which happened in 1971 when Neil Armstrong said, "One giant leap for mankind, one small step for man." Well, on that note, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. What does space exploration mean? The vision of John F. Kennedy and where we are today with some of the visions that he had as President of the United States. And what would he think of America today, many, many, many years after his passing? Join us now with Mark Lee, the Wizard of Oz, our co-producer, Chris Greco, our data and foreign policy analyst, Nick Paudiva, the founder of the Network, and Dan Worthington, one of our political analysts. Welcome to the show, gentlemen, and Lee Newton Rose. So let's begin with Jakarta. I'm going to drive it into Chris to share with us some stories. Bear with me, guys. I've got a headache today. It might be just waiting for things to slow down, but I'm not 100% today, so I'm going to have you guys pitch in and carry a little bit of the load. But Chris, go ahead and talk about the Jakarta, Indonesia.
Okay, so this is from volcanodiscovery.com, which I was trying to make up a map showing the different volcanoes aspects. You never have to make up data if there's already data here. So basically, what they did is they tracked the data on these different earthquakes. Now you can set whatever you want from sample. You can do all different seismic aspects: 2.0 plus, 3.0 plus, 4.0 plus, 5.0 plus, or 6.0 plus. Now, if I just hit 6.0 plus, look at you've had since. So here's 6.8, and this is where the one that just happened. So this is the one that happened November 18th. But I mean, look at that's 6.0. I mean, this is called the Pacific Ring of Fire or the Indian Ring of Fire. What happens is the Ring of Fire extends all the way. I mean, it extends almost like almost all the way around the world. There's an Atlantic, there's a Pacific, there's an Indian, there's all kind of different rings of fire. So basically what's happened is these poor saps, this is 4.0 plus, a 4.0 on the seismic scale. So, I mean, you're talking about not extreme damage, but certainly there's damage, especially especially when you're talking about houses that are made of wood. They're just because this is not exactly a winter type country, so you have very light housing. So this is what's happened. 4.6, 5.3, 5.6. I mean, 5.5. So there's a lot of different areas here, and this again is since November 18th. So since November 18th, when they had the big one, they've had November 19th, they had one, 5.3, November 20th, 5.5, November 21st, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quakes in the Indonesian area. So, I mean, these are constant quakes. Now, the reason is, and this is something that I want to point out, is because of where they're located. If you take a look at where they're located here, this is all tectonic plate here. This whole area here. You can see where the plate is. That's underneath the ocean, of course, but you can see everywhere along that plate there's an earthquake, and that's what happens when you have these tectonic plates that just move back and forth, constant shifting. Then you have these earthquakes, and you have tsunamis that attribute to that too. So this is just really sad. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. Chris, just really quickly, because I know I've been shocked by this a couple of times, and other people that have been watching will probably be shocked as well. But I know a lot of times when we think of the plates and we think of things that happen in that space, we oftentimes think of things that are overseas and definitely on the West Coast. But I do remember it was not that long ago, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, that there was actually an earthquake tremor that was felt right here in North Carolina. So I think that folks don't oftentimes understand that these plates are actually even in places that we may not expect, like the East Coast and like even in the middle of the country and all in that space. Right. You remember there being I was actually working in measurement on that particular day, and folks were like, wait, why is the building shaking? And all in that space. August 11th,
2011, I think it was. There was a massive earthquake along that East Coast, hit Maryland. I was at National Security Agency at the time, and all of a sudden the building literally started to tremble, around us type thing. So it does happen on the East Coast, and it's interesting because there is a supposed volcano in North Carolina. It's called Mount Airy, which is literally right up the street from us. But it was portrayed
and also made famous by Andy Griffith.
Yes, and that's right. And Jules Verne. Jules Verne actually called it Mount Erie, which is interesting, but it was actually Mount Airy. So there's been some volcanic activity, and that's, again, there's tectonic plates that flow along there because of prehistoric aspects. But this is just, I do not understand how people can live in Indonesia with this type of environment. But then again, I take a look at all the wildfires in California and everything else, and people love it in California. So I guess you just do whatever you need to do.
Or the constant tornadoes and other things that are there in Florida. So if you're going to live in Miami or other parts of Florida, like Nick used to do,
or Tennessee,
you have to deal with that on a regular basis as well. I was actually talking to a friend of mine that went and visited Miami not that long ago, and they were loving the torrential downpours that come out of the middle of nowhere, because you might have a lovely sunny day where you're at the beach, and then all of a sudden a severe thunderstorm comes out of nowhere, but then it's gone after like about 5 or 10 minutes. So it's hard to have some serious unpredictable weather.
So this is, Chris, this is amazing. So go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Is there any way for them to forecast? We forecast the weather out weeks. Is there any way to forecast or predict when these volcanoes or earthquakes are going to hit?
Well, actually, there is. Now, I've done some reading on this. The seismic aspect is always present. So whenever it's constantly monitored, so it's set to alert after a certain period of seismic activity. So you can have what they call pre-earthquake seismic activity, and as long as you have a sensor there, and it can hit it, then they have enough time to be able to tell people that it's going to happen. But as far as, I mean, basically it's evacuation, because or get into a safe place.
Well, I'm sorry, when you say enough time, how much time are we talking?
Now, let me explain.
Sure, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lee.
Yes. So Lee, we're talking about. I mean, it's not much. I mean, from the pre seismic activity to the actual seismic activity, you have maybe a couple hours. And that's about as best you're going to get.
Along those same lines, I remember, because I think I've mentioned it on this show a couple of times, but one of the careers that I had thought about exploring when I was a youngster was being a weatherman. And one of the things I did is I definitely had the whole barometer and the wind vanes and all of that, but I also had a copy of the Farmer's Almanac. And if you follow the Farmer's Almanac, a lot of times they will be having some great predictions, including things that are much further in advance. That's part of the reason that farmers like the Farmer's Almanac. So I would think that some of that stuff that is in the Farmer's Almanac, some of that is wise tales and things of that nature, but some of it is based on actual facts and research, because they have definitely had a tremendous accuracy rate. And I do know a lot of the people that are farmers, both here in North Carolina as well as throughout the country, that use that on a regular basis. So I just wanted your take on the accuracy of the Farmer's Almanac.
So and this will answer Lee's question a little bit too. We've tried to predict earthquakes in the past. Now, according to the United States Geological Survey, the .gov aspects, they're basically saying, it's almost impossible to predict earthquakes. And here's why. One is earthquakes is not based on climate. Now, a lot of people sit there and say, "Oh, earthquakes is climate change." Well, no. Earthquake is based on, it has nothing to do with clouds, has nothing to do with slugs, has nothing to do with crickets, has nothing. So you have to define the date, the time, the location, and the magnitude, and you just can't do that with the current prediction methods you have right now. The only thing you can do is just take a seismic aspect and say, okay, this is a growing area. We got to tell people, and then hope to God that you can get them out before the actual earthquake hits. But until that point in time, it's really almost impossible to tell when an earthquake is going to hit. Now, I'll tell you. Go ahead. I'm sorry. What?
Same with volcanoes, predicting them.
That's right. Same thing. Anything that has to do with underground aspects and those types of things. Now you can sit back and you can say, well, the last volcanic eruption was 20 years ago, so therefore, hey, we're due type thing. But that doesn't mean anything. It's the bottom line is that that it's very hard to predict when it's not based on climate aspects. It's based on literally shifting of tectonic plates, which sorry, unless you're doing. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I believe. This is conjecture, is underground nuclear testing. Whenever you do underground nuclear testing, you are literally exploding a volcano underneath the earth. So when you do that, you're putting enough pressure on that tectonic plate or whatever plate there is that there's going to be more earthquakes that are going to occur. Now, this is my conjecture, and it's happened in Iran a lot. They have a lot of earthquakes in Iran, and a lot more since they have been not doing any nuclear testing. But I believe they have.
I'm sorry, Steve. Chris, one more question. I'm sorry. Volcanoes do horrific damage on the ground. What do they contribute to the atmosphere in terms of climate, in terms of pollution?
Well, that's a good point. In Iceland, we had a volcanic eruption, and basically it spewed ash and debris, something like 8 miles in the air. So when you're talking 8 miles, right? So everyone sits there and says, "Well, that's no big deal." Well, 40,000 feet is basically 8 miles. So now all your jet traffic has to stop. You can't go through that. You can't go through that cloud. The cloud puts so much dust and debris in the air that it basically blocks the sun. So at that point in time, there's issues having to do with some cooling that's being done because of that debris and ash. And in addition to that, you have earthquake that's as a result of the volcanic aspect. And interestingly enough, the one Tonga, I think it was a Tonga explosion. It was actually an underwater volcano, and I have some I haven't I got it readily available, but I saw the actual explosion, on from Google Earth, and let me tell you something. That is an amazing explosion. I mean, and the amount of debris and water and dust even cleared that area was astronomical. So yeah, and Iceland has active volcanoes. Interestingly enough, South America has a ton of active volcanoes. A lot of them, especially in the northwestern side of South America. So there's a lot of volcanic activity, and that can contribute. Now that could contribute to the climate change aspect. So
and real
I'm sorry.
quickly,
Go ahead.
no, I think that's great. And I read somewhere about before we go to the other issues, there's been some innovation in terms of technology that could actually warn you on your phone about a potential earthquake. So I'll find out. I was reading something in Wall Street Journal or Times of India of some kind of economic, some kind of technology innovation, which would be very interesting if we could leverage data to actually give us an analysis. Hey, there's a storm coming or whatever. But I'm going to try to find that. We have Sasha that joined us, and then I want to get into some political analysis. But Sasha, recently it said that a study done by the Washington Post showed that only 1,000 miles of Ukraine has been taken over by Russia. So any updates from us in terms of just what's going on as we head into December, winter months in that part of the world?
I'll have a special program at 11 o'clock where we will.
Okay, so we'll just get you there.
And the question is, it's very clear what Ukraine wants to achieve as outcome of this war. They want to free all their territory from Russian invaders. It's very clear what Russia wants as outcome of this war. They want to eliminate the Ukraine totally, then go and take Moldova, and then start going after the Eastern European countries. What is unclear at this point, what United States want out of this war. And until we'll find out the answer to this question, the war can finish almost instantly. One outcome is that US completely stops supporting Ukraine, and Ukraine without that help, financial, weapons, everything else, they will collapse. They will not survive, not even the winter. They will not survive even for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Now, second variation is the United States wants to weaken Russia as much as possible, and therefore it's in their interest to continue the war, make it long, and Russia will spend all its resources, weapons, lives, human lives. And the third variation is that the United States don't know what they want. So they're playing both sides. They're trying to see how that works, and so on. And therefore, fighting between the Republicans and Democrats or so on. So it will go just like that for another several months.
Right.
That's what to discuss.
Well, we're going to continue to follow the situation. We continue to pray for Ukraine, and there were some analysts on Fareed Zakaria today that this weekend that talked about I can't remember their names, but just that Putin is just continuing to miscalculate and misjudge, but he's just not going to stop. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this affects U.S. policy and also the presidential elections. Which let's shift to that real quickly. I want to bring in Dan Worthington to talk about something that I'm beginning to realize is that despite the fact that many of us are hoping that if you are a Republican, there are people that want DeSantis to be the nominee. Don't you think there's a really good likelihood of Trump winning the nomination? Because I did also research that in his last campaign, when he ran for the nomination, he was running against a huge field of Republicans and was able to squeak away 35% to win the primary. So in the U.S. system, you don't have to win 50%. You can win by 35, 40%. So let's say all these people get in like Pence, like Nikki Haley, like DeSantis. It's not DeSantis versus Trump. I mean, don't you think if the Republicans want DeSantis to be the nomination, they need to start striking deals now? Because in the primary system, the extremes of each party control. It's not a winner-take-all system. So what do you think about that? Because I'm starting to think that Trump will be the nominee if multiple people are in the field.
Yeah, I don't. I don't. I hope that Trump doesn't prevail. That would not be good for our country. Uh, DeSantis would be a better choice because he would. He's a strong leader. He would carry on the good policies that we all enjoyed in the Trump administration without any of the fun stuff that we end up in not enjoying so much from Trump. I don't think Trump's going to change his spots. I think there are more Republicans becoming disenchanted with him because of his baggage, and it could be that the reason he's running, I think, is to try to avoid prosecution on some of these other things. But I don't know. He might be doing it just because of his ego and because and especially if the Democrats run that fool Biden again. But he needs to retire. He's 80 years old. Please go home, right? And let's get some young blood in. I mean, both those guys need to give it up and let us start afresh with new faces and new fresh ideas and stop the political name calling and divisiveness that's marred our nation. I think DeSantis would be better at healing, but it really depends on what the liberals do, right? If they attack him with the fervor of Trump and with all kinds of investigations and crap and dirty tricks like they did with Trump, which they did, we know that now as a fact. And I mean, what they did to Trump was seditious. It was unlawful. It should have never been permitted.
Yep.
And it was encouraged and supported by the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA, and they tried to nail his butt to the wall illegally using false facts, which was wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was wrong. It should have been a bigger thing than Watergate, except on the sides of the Democrats. Democrats tried to flip the script on Trump when they were guilty of the things they were claiming he was guilty of in Ukraine, everywhere. I mean, it's so amazing that they try to flip the script. Now look what they're trying to do with Alito. It's shameless what the
I
Democrats
think it's politics
do.
in general. I have to be the moderator. I disagree with some of that. But
No, Steve, it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse.
Yeah.
They're no more gentlemen. They're no
Dan,
more
has it-
gentlemen.
Well, it's Dan. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Dan and Chris, has it really gotten worse though? Because I mean, you're talking about something that's been going on for decades. I can go back as far
Sure.
as
I mean,
the labor organizations. I can go as far back as the civil rights organizations. The FBI, the CIA, all these agencies have been politically motivated for decades and all in that line. And they definitely, and I would say that they do it on both the right and the left. They plant spies. They do all kinds of things.
Mark?
Let's take and Mark,
Chris?
you're right. You're right. I agree. But I'll tell you, when you talk about ratcheting up rhetoric, and Dan, I agree with you. Basically, I don't know if any Republican has said, now that they've taken over the House, we're going to impeach the MFer. And that's what Rashida Tlaib said. We're going to impeach the MFer on air.
Before he got in office.
No, this was 2 years into his office.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think that was when that's when the Democrats took the House in 2018. I think it was 2018. Yeah, I mean, so basically we're going to be, and they did. What was it, 3 times or whatever it was? I have no problem, and I really don't. And this is really 12-year-old-ish me talking. But if they impeach Biden if the Republicans impeach Biden, even though it won't get past the Senate, they won't convict, but they never convicted Trump either. I believe that they should do that. They should impeach the guy. Just something.
Well,
Every single, it gets to that point, Mark.
Hold on a second.
Sure, I'm sorry.
I just did a Google search and everything, and in January 5th of this year, 2022, Ted Cruz said that if his party takes the House, it will impeach President Biden. So you can't say that about Tlaib and not say it about your own party as well.
No, I don't have any. Yeah, Mark, but he didn't say we're going to impeach the MFer. This is a woman that was on the air. She knew she was being taped, and you talk about ratcheting up rhetoric. You don't do that. Not as a professional, not as a person of Congress, certainly not as a representative of me.
You can do what Ted Cruz did either, because he hadn't even gotten in office. We're talking about January 5th actually he wasn't in office.
It doesn't matter. Biden does deserve to be impeached. He deserves to be impeached.
And this is Mark. This is a situation where I'm going to try to go between you guys, between Mark and Dan. Dan, that nobody deserves or earns impeachment. Basically, what happens is that they have to do something that is so egregious, that is so seditious, that's so just traitorous that they're going to do impeachment. Should we have impeached Clinton because he got a BJ in the Oval Office? I don't know. We should have never done. Yes, we should have hold the guy. We should hold the guy responsible. We should have dumped his political, his political stuff. That was just like nutsy cuckoo. And of all people to do that,
if there had been a Twitter, he would have been toast. If there had been a Twitter or Facebook back then, he would have been toast.
I know. Well, the thing was,
remember there was a 2-day. I don't know if you all remember this, but I remember that it was 19. I don't remember what year it is, but there was something that came out, and then there was silence for 2 days, and then he denied it. He said, "I did not," with that puckered lip. Remember that? He goes, "I did not have."
Well, it was the dress. Monica Lewinsky saved the dress.
Yeah.
Didn't send the cleaners.
2 days later, he came on national television, and he said that he had a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was inappropriate. And I was like, if there had been a Twitter or Facebook, he would have been resigning. He would have been resigning like the next day, right?
I mean, and that's kind of a shame. But basically, do I think Biden deserves impeachment? Did I think Trump deserves impeachment? No, I never thought he deserved impeachment, and I never thought Biden does. But something, if it's going to get to the point where every single president is going to be impeached the minute they get into office, or the minute that the Republicans take over for Democrats, then
Chris and Dan, just for a lighthearted note,
but
to get off
money and aiding and abetting an enemy of the United States, which he did, that's impeachable. His son and him
can say the same thing about Trump.
In aiding an enemy of the United States and financial gain. That's a fact. It happened. We know it.
But Dan, people can say the same thing about, and I want to mention two people. People can say the same thing about some dealings that were going on politically with Trump and foreign governments. And even though he has passed, people can say the same thing about some deals that were going on between Reagan and some foreign people. So this whole notion of being impeached because of your dealings with foreign folks,
I don't think so, Mark.
You're not saying you don't think that there was deals between Noriega and other drug people?
Chinese. Not only was it back before, it's also during the current administration with oil deals with them and everything else. Hunter Biden's been benefiting from these relationships with the Chinese government while his father has been in office.
I would argue that there have been people that have been doing that for decades.
Right? Oh, yes, I know they have. But the problem is it's illegal and it's immoral and it's seditious. Do you agree, Chris, or not?
Yes, the thing is, the minute that Joe Biden has been caught on tape, talking to his son about different aspects and everything else. So I think there's, but the thing is, at this point, Biden has stated he's going to run in 2024, and I think the only reason he stated that is Trump is running in 2024. But if he is true to his word and he does that, which I'm hoping he changes, if he does that and he goes up against DeSantis, or he goes up against Nikki Haley, or he goes up against whomever, they're going to rip his heart out on a debate. It's going to be just a shame.
Here's the problem with that. Here's the advantage. as an analyst, here's why Donald Trump is going to win the nomination, in my opinion. First of all, this is a presidential election, okay? This guy, regardless of whether we agree with him or not, has an organization. He has people in every precinct, in every county, in every city, in every state, urban and rural. This is an organization, just like his business organization. Even if DeSantis or Nikki Haley were to run, it's going to take them billions of dollars and almost a year and a half to create that ground organization. They don't have it. So this is more than just running for the governor of Florida. I mean, you know, and so Nikki and Pence and these guys, if they all run, they're going to divide up that base, the anti-Trump base, and this guy is going to win 35 to 40%, and he is going to be the Republican nominee. And to be very honest with you, he does have a chance to be the president again. I think that the only Democrat that can beat him is Joe Biden, the polling shows. It still may be tough with the inflation of the economy, and Biden's probably not going to run. So this has been calculated. I'm telling you, guys, get ready. I mean, I'm not happy about it because I don't want him back in the White House, but Donald Trump can be the president of the United States again. Happened once with Grover Cleveland. His only downfall is that Ivanka Trump, who's the smartest person in his family, doesn't want him to run.
It's bad.
Yeah. I mean, his policies, I agree with Dan. His policies are not bad, Steve. It's just, but I'll tell you, I really hope to God that, I mean, I really hope he does not.
He's got a great chance, guys. He's not the kind of guy that does something without.
He's got a great chance to win, and we've actually talked about bringing back one of our old shows. I was actually talking to Kim about that.
Progressive than a lot of Republicans.
Who's that?
The Democrats only hate him because he's Donald Trump. His agenda is a lot of many of his agendas were the kinds of things Democrats would do. I mean, he was rather progressive, and so the only thing that makes him hateful is the fact that he's a carnival barker and insults everybody at every turn.
That's the Don Rickles of the presidency.
But he is but that's part of the problem.
And remember, he was a Democrat. Okay. Remember, Dan, Donald Trump at one time was a member of the Democratic Party for quite some time.
I know.
So
he's also like bipolar because I went back and was watching all the inaugural addresses, and his first inaugural address, he was so praising to Obama and Michelle Obama, right? He was like, they were magnificent, they were wonderful, and then the next day he would say they were pathetic, they were horrible. You know,
exactly.
It's like, make up your mind. What do you? It's like he's a different guy.
Well, I mean, he's a snake oil salesman. Snake oil
salesman.
salesman.
You know who encouraged him to run?
I've had dealings with some snake oil salesmen in different businesses.
It was Bill Clinton.
Right,
Bill
because he was good friends with the Clintons. That is absolutely true. That's true. They have a lot of pictures of him with the Clintons together.
I mean, I don't.
But I mean, he was also. I mean, we want to talk about friends. He was also friends with the Epstein, so we don't really want to go there.
No, I think it was Clinton who was
everybody
friends.
Was friends with Epstein. I'm surprised that Nick didn't take a trip to the Fantasy Island.
No, so I just wanted to point out something that happened with Trump. Trump was president. He went over to Germany, and Angela Merkel was over there, and he did not shake her hand. As a matter of fact, he barely looked at her. And I cannot go into why. I know why that happened. But one day when I'm on my deathbed, you know, we'll find out. But I'll tell you something.
When it's no longer classified.
Is it possible
when it's no longer classified. That's correct. But I mean, a lot of people took a look at Trump and said how rude he was, but they do not understand the background of that whole thing and why Angela Merkel, you know, she was saying, well, let's, shake hands or whatever else. He's, I'm not going to shake your hand. And honest to God, he shouldn't. I mean, he shouldn't have. As a matter of fact, he should have never gone to Germany. So, I mean, because I was on a project for that, and like I said, I can't even intimate what happened there.
Note, before we get into the shootings at the Colorado Club, World Cup, any favorites? I know we got the.
Well, like I said, I'm rooting for the USA. Well, I do root for the USA, but I'm also a fan and have been a fan ever since the Pelé days. So I will be rooting for Brazil once again. So definitely, I think Brazil's got a strong possibility, and that's definitely one of the teams that I'll be rooting for, and hopefully they do well, and they are actually a favorite and all in that. But I did have a question about politics, and it's something that goes on every year. In 2 days all of us will not be on the air because we'll be hopefully celebrating with our families on Thanksgiving. And once again, another president has pardoned a turkey. Do we really care? Because this becomes a regular story and all of that. Of course, he made jokes about it, like no ballots, no foul play, and all of that. But Biden has pardoned the Thanksgiving turkey, who I think was a turkey from North Carolina, and he has pardoned the turkey. So that particular turkey will not be on anybody's plate because he got pardoned. Now, I don't know how the rest of the turkey
the first dog was very upset about that.
And there's plenty of turkeys in the Democratic Party.
Mark, what was the turkey accused of? What are the charges?
Yeah, well, they pardoned him. I guess that they're charged with being a good turkey and a good turkey to eat.
That's capital punishment.
He pardoned 2 turkeys, Chocolate and Chip. That was the name of the turkeys as he discharged the presidential duty. Because apparently this is a presidential duty. We're talking about the duties of the Congress. This is a duty of the president to have an annual Thanksgiving turkey party. Aren't there other things we need to be worried about other than a turkey party? But
but Mark, you sure gobbled up that story.
Very cute, Chris.
You would I don't know, man. This whole pardoning turkey. There was a meeting at the White House. I got invited again. I don't know. I must be on the wrong list. I was invited to the pardon event, but I just didn't. I'm like, I've been to the White House twice in a year, but
no big deal.
I keep getting.
You were invited to go to the pardon
ceremony. You invited to the pardoning, and you did not go to the pardoning.
You didn't go. Come on, Steve.
No, I didn't.
Steve. We'll do a fundraiser for you next time. We'll have to do a fundraiser for
you could have rescued. You could have brought the turkeys onto the news. We are highly upset with you. The turkeys could have made their appearance today.
Getting there was a bear with the travel.
By the way, Mark, we actually have a show that broadcasts from Indonesia. Billy Graham. He broadcasts from Bali, which is in Indonesia.
Bali and Korea.
So you may want to check on and see if he's still alive.
Well, he's got a show on, well, not this Thursday, but next Thursday. The last time I texted, he was still doing well. He'd actually gone from Indonesia and Bali to Korea. So he's actually in Korea, which actually brings me to another story that I was going to get to because, these are relatives. You got to love these relatives and all of that. And I know we talked about it with the whole nature of the Trumps and the Bidens and all of that. But there's a certain sister that is also in the news because Kim's sister, that lovely Kim over there in North Korea, but his influential sister warned the U.S. on Tuesday that it would face, and I quote, a more fatal security crisis as Washington pushes for UN condemnation of the North's recent intercontinental ballistic missile test. So Kim Yo-jong's warning come hours after the U.S. ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield told an
got a solution to this problem.
Security Council that the U.S. will circulate a proposed presidential
got a solution to this problem.
North Korea's banned missile launches.
All we have to do is send Dennis Rodman over there again.
So definitely they are saying that
get to the bottom of all this.
Hold on a second. They're saying that she's the second most powerful person after her brother over there in North Korea, and she lambasted the United States for issuing what she called a disgusting joint statement together with such rebels as Britain, France, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. And she compared the United States, you're going to love this one, Steve, to a barking dog seized with fear. She said North Carolina would consider the U.S.-led statement a wanton violation of our sovereignty and a grave political provocation.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Send Trump over there to talk to him.
Been on the show. His daughter works for Linda Thomas Greenfield, pretty as a policy advisor. So that's pretty amazing. So looking forward to. So anyway, real quickly, any predictions on the World Cup? I got to watch a little bit this week. U.S. tied Wales. Is there any favorites here?
That's an easy one.
There will be no beer.
Very easy. Here's what's going to happen. The Brazil will take it all and probably will win all its matches. There is no one who can match Brazil. That's very, very obvious. Now, all the rest of the teams, including US, there's Canada, there's some other teams, I wish they would progress as well as African teams did. Because if you look, African teams, they almost eliminated all the difference between the top teams. Look at this Cameroon. It held a very strong Netherlands team to a 0-0 draw. and only then, in the last few minutes, the Netherlands scored two. They scored two brilliant goals. There's nothing you can do. Netherlands is one of the top teams in the world. England looks extremely good, except that they will not win the championship. France remains to be seen. They lost their leading scorer, Karim Benzema. So I don't think that they have real chances. So beside Brazil, who can pose? It's
Germany might have a shot. Germany might have a shot.
Maybe we have to see their team.
Yeah.
We have to see their team. So far,
Germany.
they don't have any. Germany, so far they don't have any stars. But let's see, maybe they have strong physical team. I don't think they have any chances to take a World Cup. So the only two teams beside Brazil who can fight for it are Spain and Portugal. And that's about it. Yeah.
So Uruguay basically has just gone down the tubes with soccer. That's a shame. They were really, really strong in the 70s and 80s.
But look, they were even strong like 8 years ago. Even 4 years ago, they were strong. But they have the same players and they're aging. And I don't think. Look at Messi today. I watch the match. It's a shade of a real Messi. It's not the same.
Is Russia sending a team, Sasha? Did Russia send a team?
To jail, maybe not to.
Yeah, because I didn't see them, so I don't know.
That all
Speaking of Russia and teams and everything,
Chris, Iran did.
Yeah, Iran did. And speaking of Russia's and teams and all of that, Russia apparently, they got enough problems with Ukraine, and now they've got other concerns going on because I understand that they are talking about the whole situation between Syria and Turkey and putting their voice in that conversation. And they're also,
can you imagine that?
Their voice, and I'd love to hear Sasha's thoughts around this over a license plate issue that's going on in Kosovo.
Kosovo and Serbia.
They're having this whole thing between Kosovo and this whole conflict going on between Kosovo and other parts of that area over the license plate. So they're having a license
plate. Wait until China will ask for its Siberian territory back, and Japan will ask for its islands, Kuril Islands back. It's all coming.
I think Putin, and I want to say this for Sasha, because I want Sasha to comment on this. Putin said that Turkey, basically in a gist, Turkey needs to back off and, not interpose into Syria's territory with bombing. I just wanted to say, Sasha, Putin, he was nominated for the Nobel Prize, Nobel Peace Prize. What was it, last year or something? The Russian committee put him in for it.
But Chris,
so what do you think, Sasha?
Listen, Chris, isn't it true that Don Corleone was also nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize? So there's a good company.
And there it is.
Turkey deserved him.
But yeah, Chris and Sasha, do we? Because I do remember that if you study the history of world wars, there were sometimes minor little things that led to the world war. So is this whole thing between Kosovo and Serbia and the license plates going to lead further into another war? Because the article is saying that a row, and I did say a row, like a whole fight over car number plates in Kosovo, is threatening to erupt into open unrest and one of the most serious regional crises in years. When we already having a serious crisis in Ukraine, as tensions between Serbia and its breakaway former province continue to mount.
Put my share screen up just for a second. So this is Google Earth, so I wanted to show where everything was, because I think this is important. So yes, so basically what happens is that the Serbians are saying to Kosovo, and this is Serbia. This is Serbia here. We'll put it up a little bit. This is Serbia here, Kosovo is here, North Macedonia is here, and then here you have Greece. So what's happening is that the North Macedonians are trying to emigrate. They're trying to get into Serbia and Montenegro and these areas. And so basically Kosovo and Serbia is saying, no, we don't want you guys here. So they're starting to put up walls and whatever else to try to keep them from doing whatever they need to do to get up in this area. So Serbia, you have to remember, this was all Yugoslavia at one point in time. Bosnia and Herzegovina, that was a big deal with the what they call the Bosnian crisis in the 1990s. I was part of that. I was actually we did a lot of work to intelligence in this area, and then you have Croatia, which is by itself over here. They're mostly Muslim. So Serbia was the one that was getting all the problems.
Croatia, sorry, Croatia was never a Muslim. It's a Catholic country.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I got this mixed up. So Croatia, and then you have Serbia, and Croatia. They share a border here, which is they kind of leave them alone type thing. But Serbia had a lot of problems with Bosnia and Herzegovina. They were bombing areas, especially around Sarajevo. They wanted this area really, really badly, and that's where what was his name? Sasha Milosevic. Milosevic in Serbia. This guy was just nuts, and they ended up taking him to court, taking him to the international court. They grabbed him up, arrested him after he got unelected, and then he died of a heart attack. So you have a lot of issues in this area. No doubt.
Speaking of a lot of issues and everything, I've got to get to Sasha on another one as well, because we've had conversations a number of times about the immigration crisis here in the United States and whether we should be allowing people or not allowing people back in and everything. Guess what? Your country is now betting big on immigration to fill its gap in its economy left by aging baby boomers leaving the workforce. But apparently not everybody in Canada is on board, because earlier this month, the federal government in Canada announced an aggressive plan to take in 500,000 immigrants a year by 2025, with almost 1.5 million new immigrants coming to the country over the next 3 years.
We got plenty.
What are your thoughts about this? Because it looks like we're going to bring a lot of folks into Canada, and we're just going to flood Canada with lots of immigrants from around the world. So
and I think this is
to take not 500,000, but 1 million and maybe even 2 million people. Maybe not in 3 years, say maybe in 5 years, because they have to prepare infrastructure or so on. Canada badly needs people. And of course, they are talking about 1.5 million qualified people, not just any people. But I'll tell you, Canada is ready to take not just qualified, but just any people.
Next week, guys, and I want to take this is a issue that I'm speaking a lot about in the local press and national press organizations, but this is a huge issue. There was recently a Times of India article about this. We've had Shrishti Sharma, remember the dreamer that came on the show? She's a UNC student, documented dreamer. She's aging out of the system, doing a lot of innovation at the University of North Carolina. And in 2 years, she's going to have to leave and start all over again. So this is a really big issue in terms of legal immigration and the need for talent and global talent, particularly now during a labor shortage. And so what's happening is, and I'm working on an article right now for one of the publications here, but I think there could be a brain drain in the US, because if these bright minds don't come here to start their companies and do this great technology and innovation, they're going to go somewhere else.
Well, we're supposed to be the melting pot and everything, but apparently, according to some of the articles I've seen, actually, there's only 14% of the United States population that is immigrants, and all in that space. The UK also has a population of about 14% as well. So I do know a lot of countries are very much wanting their own to stay in there and to get the support of their own and all in that space. But, that's going to be interesting, because the UK has also been trying to attract more immigrants, and it's not just us that are trying to get the immigrants. It's a lot of the big powers around the world that are trying to get immigrants to come into their area.
I think the issue has been the illegal immigration. And, this is what brought Trump to power, talking about the wall and illegal immigrants. I'm not as dramatic as him that they're all, rapists and murderers and whatever. But
some of them are.
But the bottom line is too many people are coming in illegally. And I think the challenge is, how do you separate the two issues as you're dealing with immigration reform? I think what they need to do is accelerate the path to citizenship for those who are here legally, give the documented dreamers a chance to become citizens, because I think they're bringing in jobs, they're creating opportunity, they're creating revenue, and they're paying taxes. But at the same time, we have to address border control, which is not happening at all. And so I think that's the problem. We talk about immigration reform, but you got to get the votes in the Senate. You got to get the votes in the House. I mean, and now
Steve, to that nature, would the Canadian approach work? Because I did hear what Sasha said, and some of the articles I've been reading have been saying that same thing, which is that they are looking for economic immigration. So about half of the Canada's permanent residents are welcome because of their skills and not because of the family that they are with and all of that. So it wouldn't be like a Greenland situation. They're actually coming in because of their economic skills. And by 2025, the Canadian government hopes to make that 60%. So they're hoping to say that most of the people that are coming in there are going to come in to Sasha's point because they are building the economy and they're coming in for economic reasons, not because of their family members already being here or being there.
Well,
Steve, you mentioned before you want people to
ahead.
come here and set up businesses here and be trained here, but we have to be concerned that their loyalties are to here and not to China or other countries.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
Or the
but look,
drug
I mean,
cartels.
but I mean, look, Lee, that's a good point. But I tell you, when you look at, and I know Dan Worthington, who's a Republican, would agree with me as well. He's said time and time again that he was against affirmative action because it is unfair to the Asians or the Indians. But let's look at North Carolina as a case example.
And the Mormons.
Today, 62% of PhDs in a major university in North Carolina are foreign born. Most are from India and China. 62%.
And how would you? And to come back to what Lee is
No,
asking,
but the point is they're doing the innovation. They're of course their loyalty is the United States. I mean, I can tell you, I have 20 companies run by Indian-based CEOs that are going to leave the U.S. and start their businesses somewhere else because it's taken them 15 years to get a green card. So we're encouraging these entrepreneurs to leave, and you know what? Then they're not going to be loyal to the U.S. They're going to be loyal to Canada. So my thing is that there is a connection between skilled immigration that's legal and in entrepreneurship and growth of businesses versus illegal immigration, which is a whole separate issue. So, but yeah.
But let me ask a question to everybody on the panel. I don't know the answer to this, and I may have my own opinions, but to come back to what Lee was asking and everything, because I do agree, Chuck, I have an upstairs neighbor that's literally from Beijing and all of that, because he's coming here to go to school and everything. So are we saying that if somebody's going to want to come here, and I remember meeting a young lady that was also from China as well, that I was meeting on one of the bus routes and all of that, that they would need to make a pledge of some sort that they are going to be committed to the United States, or that they're going to stay here for a while? Or is it all right for somebody that is from a country that is known to be not one of our friends? Because like I said, my upstairs neighbor is literally from Beijing. We had a long conversation yesterday, a couple of weeks ago, about that and everything. So are we saying that we need to have loyalty oaths of some sort if people are coming
No. I don't think that's what they're saying. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to speak for anybody else on this panel, but let me tell you, to speak for me. You want to live in the United States, pay your taxes. As long as you have revenue, as long as we get revenue from you, from the standpoint of, being able to for your share of whatever type of social things that you need and that you want and whatever else, hey, I'm in. If you want to stay in the United States, but I'll tell you something, there's a phrase used. I would rather have people, and Mark, let me ask you a question. If you have a person that knocks at your front door and asks for you to enter, isn't that much better than coming in through a window? And
I agree with you on that, but I guess the question I'm asking for everybody here is
loyalty
from the student standpoint. A lot of these students are literally doing what Steve just described. They're coming to school here to get that education, and after they get their education, I think even Nick has brought this up, a lot of times they take that education and they take it to the country that they're from. Sure. Sometimes these countries are not necessarily our friends, whether that's Russia, whether that's China, whether that's a number of other things. So I guess I'm asking is, a lot of people, because we do have, no matter what we say about the education system, and it does need some reform, but we do have a pretty good education system, and particularly in certain fields. So they're coming here. I think he's getting his degree in one of the medical fields. Oh, no, actually, I think he's a lawyer. Now that I think about it, I think he's a lawyer. I'll look on LinkedIn.
Another lawyer. Great. Well, yeah, they can go back to the other country. Have a good time. Yeah, take the lawyer back there. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
First thing to do, as Shakespeare said, is kill all the engineers.
That's not what he said.
What? Isn't that what he said? Come on, Dan. Dan, it was in Shakespeare, one of his first sayings.
Well, if it's Sasha, Shakespeare said kill all the Russians.
Kill all the engineers.
It works.
Yeah, I know.
Kill all the Russian engineers. There you go.
Kill all the Russian engineers.
Russian lawyer engineers. There you go.
Well,
so we're killing all the Russian engineers.
Anytime they
I just wanted to hit Syria real quick, but this is well, this is Syria. So this is where
That's serious.
this is Turkey here.
Why would
this
anyone
is Syria
fight over
here.
this? There's nothing there. It's
And
just
believe it or not, yes, it is.
Oh, they have
Yeah,
oil.
you're right. It's pretty bad. But
Pretty
this is the town that they ended up bombing, that Turkey ended up bombing. It's right on the border between Turkey here and Syria here. So
Now, what did they do to deserve?
it's not all that great, is it? I mean, it's kind of sucky. Well, interesting you say that. They have been conducting terrorist activities on the Turkish side. So that's what's been happening. So, and they know the Kurdish have been doing that. Well, the problem is you got Kurds in Iran, you got Kurds in Iraq, you got Kurds in Syria. So basically what's happening is the Iranians are driving them out of the northwestern side of Iran. The Turks don't like them either in Syria or in Iraq. But the problem is that before the Kurds took over that town that I just showed you that was bombed, it was an ISIS stronghold. So now the Kurds went in, threw out ISIS, so ISIS doesn't control that town anymore, and then they get bombed by Turkey. So it's the Turks really have a problem with Kurdish insurgents.
They don't like Kurdish because Kurdish want their own country. But this should be a policy we have with the war in Ukraine. I would go for this policy. If a bomb originates from a city in Russia, we can return a bomb back to that city in Russia. In other words, if
that's what Sasha was saying. Yeah,
I'm okay with that. In other words, let's say
Nick, it's not so easy because Israel has that problem when the missiles are coming in because they're coming from civilian areas, and then Israel gets criticized for that.
Well, that's Israel's problem. I'm just saying for our policy, if there is a military base that launches a bomb in Russia into Ukraine, you can return the favor to that military.
Even to a civilian area?
I don't give a rat's rear because
I'm just looking at the double standard. That's all.
Well, okay, if it comes from an area, because if they're originating from a civilian area, okay, then you go back. In other words, you give, you get back.
I don't disagree with it. I just see a double standard there.
Yeah, I don't see the double standard. I think it's a real easy policy. If somebody's
think about it, this is the first ever war where one side is allowed to bomb the other side as much as it wants. Now, the other side, however, is not allowed to bomb the first side. So imagine the war between Germany and England in 1940, where Germany can bomb England every day or even 3 times a day, but England is not allowed to bomb Germany even once. And that's the way it is. That's how it's going to work, or so on. I mean, it could go for a short period of time.
Until the U.S.
English calculate how to carry out.
You go for a while and everything. Hey,
it'll do it until the Ukraine is finally admitted to NATO. Once they're admitted to NATO, the next bomb that goes off in Ukraine, now all of a sudden they can go, okay, Article 5 or whatever it is, and now they can sit there and say, hey, look, now we're being attacked, and then we go in and we just say, okay, enough of this bull crap.
Hey, Chris, I know we got to get ready to close out, so I'm getting ready to toss it to Steve. I do have to tease Nick really quick. That's all he bounced off. But the gentleman I was talking about that is studying to be a lawyer here in the area that is originally from Beijing. One of his jobs that he had was actually working for the U.S. bankruptcy court. So he was actually an intern for the U.S. bankruptcy court. So I'm going like, what the heck are you learning about the U.S. in bankruptcy court and all of that space? So that's very interesting. That's who he chose to intern for and all in that nature. And last, now I'm going to toss it to Steve. Apparently King Charles and Camilla are welcoming a leader from South Africa to continue discussing some of the allegiances between those countries. So Mr. Ramaphosa is visiting, and they're going to tackle continuing power blackouts and high unemployment and other issues that they feel that they can work together on. And that's the first visit to the UK in more than 3 years since those visits were stopped during the pandemic. So we're not the only ones going around the world traveling and trying to build up alliances, because apparently that is one that is happening as well. So we'll find out more about that visit possibly on tomorrow and what they said and what they are planning to do, since the king has welcomed South Africa's president at the start of the first state visit he is hosting as monarch. So this is his first state visit that he is hosting, and all in that nature. So
guys,
toss it off to you.
it's time for closeout. We've got to run. Really quickly, tomorrow we'll be talking about John F. Kennedy, his presidency, the day November 23rd, 1963, when he was assassinated. And it was a tragic day for America. We've all seen, and many of you were around when Walter Cronkite delivered the news that President Kennedy had been shot and killed. And I'll just end with two positive stories that reminded me of the president's challenge of ask not what your country can do for you, what can you do for your country? And yesterday in my hometown of Morrisville, we had the Morrisville Indian group in this particular neighborhood deliver free meals to all of our staff and our first responders and our firefighters. It was very moving and touching. All of them immigrants from India who wanted to serve the community. And Seva Diwali, whom we had on last week at their ceremony to celebrate, collected 5,000 pounds of food, which they were able to deliver to the homeless and the hungry. I can't think of a better time during a season of Thanksgiving when we're being grateful for our families and our friends, that we're also out there helping and loving our neighbors in a time of need, particularly now as people still are dealing with post-COVID economy and tougher economic times with inflation and gas prices. Maybe there can be some things we can still unite on together in our democracy. On that note, this is Steve Rouse signing off on November 22nd on Pod and Roku TV. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition. And I wish I could, as I was watching Walter Cronkite from the kitchen table, and that's the way it is. Thank you all so much. See you all tomorrow morning.